Hello, welcome back. We're now going to switch from ethics and values to smart cities as our subject for the WAF Futures program. And of course, although they're very different, smart cities is a very important way, a very important insight. It gives us very important insights into the future of architecture. And of course, it does relate to ethics and values. And it is, in some ways, one of the most technologically driven of the future programs, because smart cities implies digital technology, possibly even up to and including AI. So anyone who's talking, don't hold back from explaining or at least mentioning, referring to the technology. Now, we've got 4 projects to consider here. We have from Feilden Clegg Bradley Studios, Simon Doody. He's going to talk about the Green City in Kigali in Rwanda, which, as I understand it, has nothing to do about the other reasons why Rwanda is in the news at the moment, which some of you may know, is to do with migrants to Britain being sent there, possibly illegally. Then the second project we're going to look at is by WOHA, one of the leading local Singaporean architects, and it's the Punggol Digital District. And then thirdly, we have the Shanghai Airport East Transport Hub, Integrated Transport Hub, by Grimshaw, and Louise is here to talk about that for us. And fourthly, we have our old friend Leighton Reed from Desitecture talking about the digital city. I don't see Leighton, but I'm sure he'll be here on time to talk about his project. But meanwhile, Simon, please start to tell us about Kigali.
Yeah, great, thank you. Can you all hear me okay? So I'll probably set this in the context of a project and talk about smart cities, but Green City Kigali is a unique, fascinating and extremely challenging problem. And when I say unique, it's unique because it's fusing all of these agendas we know about delivering green cities, but with the important agenda of affordability. You know, we cannot throw money at the scheme to get it to work. And then layered on top of that is this whole issue of developing culturally sensitive urban design within a challenging context and a challenging cultural context. So, I mean, let's just remind ourselves of the real world issues here. You know, we've just passed 8 billion people. By 2050, we're going to add almost another 2 billion to that. And half of that population growth will be in Africa, moving into cities that do not have the infrastructure or the buildings yet to support that. So just a quick reminder of where Kigali is. It's on the same latitude as Singapore, but at 1,500 meters up, it enjoys a beautiful climate where you can naturally ventilate all year. It's sort of 20 degrees diurnal average temperature over the year. It's a country of 1,000 hills, Les Mille Collines, and it's effectively a series of very valuable plateaus, some challenging slopes to build on, and then at the base, a series of protected wetlands, which are stunning sort of natural habitats of bird life and plants, and support some agriculture. City of Kigali itself has 11 of those hills, one of which we've been given to master plan as part of the Green City Kigali. And so when you look at that global need, let's have a look at the local need. You know, Rwanda is going to develop up to 2050. There's a government plan to get there, and its population will double by that point to 22 million people. And most of those will be going into the 3 or 4 urban centers within the country. It contributes 0.003% of global greenhouse gas emissions, yet it suffers some of the worst effects of it. It already has extended dry seasons. It already has terrible sort of flood events. It's landlocked, and it has limited resources to produce construction materials. Anything that gets brought in is massively expensive. What you see here is their centerpiece, which is a real one-off in the city. And it has a very specific culture. We all remember its past. Somehow it has recovered from that, and there is an incredible sense of social cohesion there at the moment. This is Umuganda, where the members of the population come out once a month and maintain public spaces, do charity work, raise money for poor people in their villages. And this is Paul Kagame on the left, who's the president of Rwanda. So out of that, we have this project that's evolved with 4 key principles: affordable and socially equitable development, climate change adaptation and mitigation, resource efficiency, and culturally sensitive urban development. I'm going to dwell on this slide a bit. It's very complicated, but what we've done is we've understood all of the local issues there and tried to then populate these as a series of targets for the master plan that we've agreed with the client. And this one at the bottom here is smart cities technologies. And it needs to be said, all of these are sort of mutually beneficial. So we've said to ourselves, we want to get rid of the cars and encourage walking. So we create these 1 in 12 streets that cross-cut the slopes. That has an impact on health. It has an impact on accessibility, etc. But we see smart cities as a way to sort of augment these sort of connections between these different strands. We don't have money to sort of create this sort of multi-layered city that's enabled through technology. But what we do have is enough money to give everyone Wi-Fi. We have enough money to prioritize what we can get out of that. And the first one is to use it to create more efficient public transport systems, to get people to stop using the car. There's very little cars there anyway, but in future there may well be. So it's to promote that. The second one is to promote sort of resource efficiencies on the site and for government to manage public infrastructure. And then the last one is a sort of mercurial entrepreneurial aspect of it, where we want to set out some opportunities for local people to set up businesses around it, particularly around recycling. So we have an ambition that only 5% of the waste on this hill gets exported off-site. And so there's a whole sort of culture of upcycling, recycling there, and opportunities for people to create these apps to then facilitate that. So the first part of the project is to develop a master plan for 600 hectares. The hill itself, Kinyinya Hill, is occupied by a mixture of informal, formal settlements, some planned housing estates, informal infrastructure and formal infrastructure. And so we've sort of called this a sort of bottom-up approach to rapid urbanism, and part of that is looking at what the assets are on the hill that we can use and that we can amplify and that we can develop from, rather than a sort of carte blanche. So this is looking at movement and migrations. There's a road network that can be established to create what we call a circular bus route around the hill. We have a very challenging opportunity to put a BRT through the site. And again, that's part of linking it back to the smart cities. So finding the land between all these complex land ownerships that we can take a sort of 30, 40 meter right of way for a BRT route through the site is very challenging. And then this then sets up a series of sub-communities across the hill. So the hill is, is going to have 170,000 people on it. So it's seen as one centre, but also sub-centres. And so this is one of those, and there's commercial activity then activated around the transport nodes in each of these. Next one is spiritual, social, and communal life. Where do people get together? So at one scale, this is around creating pedestrian-friendly streets where people can meet. It's around creating community centres in each of these sub-centres. It's around creating religious buildings along the spine of this hill where all these different communities can come together. And here's a view of one of these sort of local community centres where people get together, for instance, to plan what they're going to do for the Umaganda process. Employment and enterprise. So the idea is we keep as many people working on the hill as possible. We've established space standards to support 55,000 jobs from light industry through to small entrepreneurial spaces within the different settlements. But it's also looking at the assets on the hill. There's some forestry on there that can be used for intense agroforestry. There's some of the best clays in Kigali to the north side of the hill, so we can establish brick making and sort of construction technology as well. And this is that idea of a street-based urban development with colonnades, spaces that can be, anything from someone wanting to sell fresh water or milk through to cafes, through to using them as bonded warehouses almost. Learning and exploring, making sure we have enough schools is absolute fundamental on this site, but it's also the nurseries, the primary schools, the TVETs, the universities. We have an incredible biosphere on the site, which is the Deutsche Welle site, which hasn't been touched in tens of years, and it's just been allowed to grow, and it's the most native forest in the whole of Kigali. So preserving that in the middle of the site as a sort of research piece for the university is super important to our proposals. And these schools are not just schools, they're community centres. They bring different neighbourhoods together, and again, there's out-of-hours use for adult education. Health and well-being, making sure we have the hospitals on the site, again, to support that social infrastructure, but also that whole sort of story of people walking and cycling to work. And making sure all of the places that we create through the sites are pedestrian friendly, and that people can navigate what are between 1 and 6, 1 and 8 slopes in a casual way. So overlaying that as some sort of structural pieces, so we have green infrastructure. This is around blue-green social networks that double up as agricultural spaces, but also deal with floodwater on the sites and extreme weather events, and how we attenuate stormwater running off the sites into natural detention basins at the bases. And again, there may be something about how smart cities can be applied to this, so that Umaganda process may be about, for instance, desilting some of these bioswales next to roads as part of the community action, replanting them. This is the eco park I talked about at the middle of the site. The BRT, it's not just a hard highway through the site, it's actually a linear park that links one end of the hill to the other. And then what we call blue-green social productive borders. These are strands of green that run through the master plan and help define these individual settlements. But they provide the peri-urban agricultural space. They provide the space that we can slow stormwater down in. And they're all overlaid over the natural conditions on the site, so they exist with the existing hydrological routes. And then we have a series of layers of the master plan, and then the master plan itself. So we're at a point where we're consulting with the city of Kigali on this and the adoption of that. And part of that master plan is setting out. The city have a sort of a smart cities agenda with a series of checklists. And part of our submission over a sort of 400-page master plan is how this can be developed over time and delivered up until 2050. So I'm going to stop here. There's a bit more to the presentation, but I think we'll save it for tomorrow.
So this is Pearl from WOHA, who's going to talk about the Bungal digital, digital park or city. You have to speak.
Is this on? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name's actually Alina. Pearl's my colleagues over there from WOHA Architects. And today I'm presenting on the Pongo Digital District Master Plan, or PDD for short. So PDD is developed, or rather the district is part of the North Coast Innovation Corridor that is planned as Singapore's new decentralized economic center. PDD is developed as a 21st century prototype of regenerative and resilient innovations. It is the first of its kind to be implemented in Singapore at such a scale. The 50-hectare master plan embraces a systems thinking approach that holistically integrates its various parts to prioritize people, nature, and sustainability. It brings together a business park, a university campus, key public spaces, district-wide services, and major public transportation nodes. Highlighted in white here is the mixed-use business park, developed by JTC, the master developer for the district. The other key anchor is the Singapore Institute of Technology. Two key pedestrian spines stitch together the entire district. In the north-south axis is a 1.3-kilometer tree-lined heritage trail, and this is the former Pongo Road that will become pedestrianized. In the east-west axis is an 800-meter-long campus boulevard. This is a pedestrianized street as well, activated by social nodes and shared amenities leading towards the waterfront. Surrounding the district is a mix of public and private residential estates. And right in the heart of PDD is a public park that we have conserved. The district is imposed with a technical height control limit, and to turn this constraint into an opportunity for sustainability, we have developed this innovative inverted skyline party. This is the reverse of a traditional bar graph skyline, which tends to be problematic for solar collection. So the inverted skyline establishes a common roof datum across the entire district, and this creates a contiguous surface to optimize productive rooftop systems. The elevated buildings also help to keep the community spaces below open and breezy, enabling better engagement with the park. The inverted skyline is further organized based on a three-dimensional layered planning approach, and the different users are integrated vertically, which optimizes land use and generates vibrancy. Resiliency is also built into the master plan by integrating rooftop PV with urban farms to test bed Singapore's solutions for energy and food security. The layered strategy places the district-wide services underground, and this segregates vehicles from pedestrians to create a car-free, fully walkable district. This section shows the 4 layers of the master plan, beginning with the vehicular and servicing layer below, overlaid by the community park layer. Next is the office and academic layer, and finally on top we have the sustainable tropical umbrella layer. Let me spotlight some of the key spaces in this section. On the left is SIT, and on the right is the business park. Within the basement at the bottom is the underground train station. Over that is the Nexus, a civic space that is linked to SIT's forum on the left. Mid-level linked bridges connect the various garden, work, and study spaces, and right on top we have the rooftop PVs. I'll now like to focus your attention on the shared pedestrian street in between SIT and the business park. Oh, sorry, one back. Yep. This is the 23-meter wide landscape campus boulevard, which is a shared mobility path that's activated by commercial and community spaces. The campus boulevard starts with an urban plaza. This is activated by a bus interchange, a hawker and community center. It also intersects with the Heritage Trail. The boulevard then transforms into a land bridge over New Punggol Road. It features sheltered public spaces, commercial, community amenities on both sides. Its endpoint is marked by a promenade plaza that engages with the waterfront market village. I'll now take you on a walkthrough of the key spaces of the boulevard. This is the urban plaza that anchors its western end. It receives people from the light rail, the bus interchange, and the surrounding residential estates. Seen on the left side is the community hawker center, and this is the interior view of it. It is designed to be bright and breezy and will be operated by a public local agency to provide affordable food for the masses. Moving along, the Nexus is the civic space within the business park. It is a sheltered 24/7 open public space above the train station, activated by retail and F&B. The Nexus is linked to the SIT Forum. This is also a sheltered, naturally ventilated event space. Roof canopies are extended to shelter parts of the boulevard, making the outdoor spaces thermally comfortable. And finally, at the east end of the boulevard is the destination market village along the waterfront. Now, the 3D master plan is facilitated by its interconnections, which is also fundamental to enabling the smart district. Vertically, escalators bring people quickly up into the buildings, which then reduces the demand on lifts. Within the buildings, social amphitheaters promote active mobility by encouraging people to take the stairs. Horizontally, an elevated pedestrian loop named the Collaboration Loop is introduced at mid-level to link up the entire district. The loop fosters a culture of interaction and exchange. It also supports a physical swapping of spaces between industry and academia. This extended section over here shows how the escalators take people up quickly from the community park level to the Collaboration Loop, where social amphitheaters invite them together. Here, the loop crosses over the Heritage Trail, where there are study spaces that overlook the park. Link bridges connect SIT's campus and JTC's business park, fostering partnerships. So PDD adopts a superblock and public transport-oriented approach. Secondary roads are limited to the pickup drop-off points only. All other roads are tucked underground, and as a result, vehicles and pedestrians are completely segregated. This section shows the district-wide infrastructure that improves efficiencies and reduces PDD's carbon footprint. It includes things like a district cooling system, waste management, a smart grid, hubs for logistics and autonomous vehicles, shared car parks, and public transportation nodes. And all of these are being monitored by thousands of smart sensors and managed by a digital twin of the entire district. The master plan also considers the future of mobility. Infrastructural provisions are made for the smart logistics hubs, autonomous vehicles, and drones. Last mile facilities are also catered for personal mobility devices and bicycles. Now, to balance density with greenery, the master plan conserves existing trees and achieves a 100% green replacement. PDD's green and blue spaces also serve as ecological stepping stones for wildlife. The district's main green spine is this heritage trail that opens up to the community park, and its 50 hectares worth of landscape performs important ecosystem services such as reducing solar heat gain, sequestering carbon, releasing oxygen, and removing air pollutants. This is the canopy walk over the heritage trail, which has informal study spaces that overlook the park. The master plan also caters to the future of working and learning by providing informal and collaborative spaces within lush garden settings. These are all designed as naturally ventilated biophilic areas to minimize energy consumption. Now, when fully implemented, PDD has the potential to catalyze impact beyond the district itself. The master plan proposes an urban mobility corridor, which is that red line that we named the Pongo line. This will encourage healthier, active living as it connects and activates other towns. The Pongo line will serve many residents within the northeast area of Singapore. And the idea is to utilize the typically barren spaces underneath existing viaducts and transform them into lush ecological connectors integrated with mobility paths that will extend the regenerative impact of PDD's master plan. Collectively, these forward-looking strategies position PDD as a 21st century prototype of regenerative and resilient innovations, making it a catalyst for change towards a people-centric, nature-positive, smart, and sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Louise, would you like to tell us about the Shanghai East Airport Integrated Hub?
Hi everyone, I'm Louise Brown from Grimshaw. I'm going to present to you. Oh, is it working now?
It's a little bit up here.
Can you hear better? I'm going to present to you today the Shenzhen East Integrated Transport Hub. So the brief for this project was to be the most integrated hub in the world, so a pretty tall order. Be integrated not in only a multimodal transport systems, but also integrated in people systems, ecology, and also technology. So the site is located to the east of Shenzhen, beside the existing airport. You can see there in the yellow. This is an image of the master plan for the future site. So currently, there's two terminals, Terminal 3 and the satellite terminal existing, and our site is to the bottom of this image, which is actually the east. So the brief was not only for an airport terminal, it's actually a very large transport interchange, high-speed rail, metro, etc. And also 119-hectare master plan to either side of the hub, and also the airfield planning. So everything is a whole integrated planning of airside and also landside. So Shenzhen is a really young city, not only because it's only literally 40 years old, where the population has grown from 0.3 million to 12.6 million. It also sits within the context of the Greater Bay Area, of a population of 70 million people, mostly recent immigrants from the rest of China. Is that where, is it? I can hear it, yeah. Just if it's loud enough for me. Sorry, I'll just move it up. But also, the average age of the people there is 35. So these people are seriously tech savvy, and their life is instant. Everything is instant, so everything must be super highly efficient. So that was the brief for our project, was to integrate all these transport systems together in a highly efficient way. So the brief is for a 20 million passenger terminal, 12-line high-speed rail, 4 metro lines and 2 intercity lines, all under one roof. That's integrated with people systems, smart mobility at surface, and also letting nature permeate through the building and the precinct. So our inspiration for the project is really based around this idea of Shenzhen being a coastal city. Shenzhen's very famous for its mangroves. Mangroves, as we know, are a great carbon absorber, but they also help protect the city. So they're a very valued tree in Shenzhen. We took this idea of the mangrove tree and being inspired by nature for the architecture of the building. But this also needed to be integrated with technology. We have 6 kind of key drivers to the project. One is about being unique, so it had to have a unique identity. It needed to be highly efficient, so integrating these transport modes, but also highly efficient in the way it used materials and resources. Regenerative hub, so looking at regenerating the whole east precinct, not just the airport site itself. Abundant with life. The most connected, and then of course innovation. So not only is it just a multimodal transport area, it's also a science and technology district as well. So our inspiration came from the mangrove trees, and it's not just the shape or the form of mangrove trees, it's also the way the very thick mangrove canopy helps to create a very unique ecosystem underneath it, and it creates shelter for many different species of plants, and also becomes a kind of cradle of life. So we saw this kind of as a starting point for our design. So you can see here this undulating roof inspired by mangroves. Sorry, I'm just trying to move it on. Is there an issue with the... I just can't...
Sorry, everybody, give us just one moment. It's the first time that's happened.
Yeah, it's all right. We actually had a look at it earlier and it was fine. So.
Yeah, very strange.
Oh, okay. Oh no, we're going backwards. So.
Going backwards.
Yeah, can we go forward one? Oh, right. Okay. Okay, great. Sorry, everyone. So again, just showing what this looks like underneath this mangrove canopy. So the canopy provides this kind of universal protection across the whole site. And underneath this extremely large canopy is kind of like a miniature campus or a whole ecosystem of things. So we use this idea of the mangrove roof. The idea, although it is kind of a quite extravagant form, it's very beautiful in its curvilinear nature. It's also highly efficient. By using this double curvature, a modular approach, we were able to create, use the same module, so we had efficiency in terms of economy of scale. But also what it did by having quite large spans was it meant that we could free up the ground plane, and we could plan the ground plane independent of the roof. And this also gives this kind of idea of future-proofing. So in the future, as things need to move around underneath the roof, we can have the flexibility for future development. So here's an image, a cross-section through the site. So we've got this really large canopy that integrates the high-speed rail, the airport functions, and the metro functions all together. And the idea is that we're trying to minimize the internal space as much as possible. So really limiting the conditioned space, and most of the space is actually this third space. So space is very tempered, it's got beautiful daylight, but also protected from the extreme heat. And of course, Shenzhen's a very lush city, so introducing landscape everywhere. And you can see here in this image, you can see...
So sorry to interrupt.
Have I gone over time?
No, sorry, one. There's a little bit of a mission critical thing going for one of the crit rooms. We just need to put this whole stage on pause for just a moment. The laptop running everything has all the presentations we need for an actual judging session. So please give us 2 minutes. We'll take the laptop and we'll get started again. And Louise, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
We've just been, sorry, it's been told by the production guys that apparently that's the only one with the laptop on.
Do you want to tell us something about how the roof mimics the mangrove tree canopy?
Yes, so the idea of the mangrove tree canopy is that it's really interesting as a kind of whole ecosystem, where the canopy protects all this life underneath. And it's really important because that's where the underneath the mangrove is actually the cradle of life. It's the birthplace of crustaceans and fish and everything like that. So we saw this as kind of symbolic, whereas Shenzhen's a very young city. It's almost a cradle of life for young people and the future. So that we wanted to create this kind of universal canopy that could protect underneath, and then, as I said, minimize the enclosure. So where we had to have enclosure over the high-speed rail, waiting hall and the airport, we had very small areas of air-conditioned space, and the rest is just a tempered environment. Yeah. So that was really important in terms of energy reduction, but also to create we were able to create these big civic spaces, cover courtyards, and then this whole, the project is 900,000 square meters in area. So as one big block or a conditioned building, it could be hugely inefficient. So what we tried to do is break it down to smaller parts. And you can see here by this image, the roof almost covers this whole area here, but it's actually a series of individual buildings under the roof.
Yeah. Good, thanks.
And this image here just shows those integrations of multi-transport modes. In the center, in the orange, we have the high-speed rail. Over to the right, we have two existing metro lines, so Metro Line 1 and Metro Line 12, they're already built. And then we have some new metro lines, two new metro lines, intercity rail, and then in blue to the far right of the image, we have the terminal, and then in purple, the APM. So it's a kind of convergence of all these different transport systems. So the planning, both vertically and horizontally, was extremely challenging. But we've kind of created this kind of seamless transition between all these different transport modes. Also, I would just mention that the management of the project and the stakeholder management with all the different government bodies and interfacing projects that were built at different times, also extremely challenging. And that's really how cities are built. This is an image of the high-speed waiting hall. So it's underneath the mangrove roof again, but we're using different ceiling treatments, soffit treatments to moderate light. And not only is it just the area under the roof, we've also got nearly 120 hectares of master plan around this site. So to the right of the image, we have Science and Technology Precinct, all linked together by these ecological corridors that connect the site. And to the bottom of the image, we have a cargo hub and aviation functions, along with some community facilities for the workers on site there as well. So we've got 20 other buildings on the site, another 380,000 square meters, and all knitted together by these ecological corridors that run through the site. And this idea of, in Shenzhen is a garden city, so very much focused on landscape. It's actually quite similar to Singapore in a way. But one of the key things in Shenzhen is this idea of ecological corridors, the mountain to sea corridor, where the ecology of the mountains permeates through the city, through these planned ecological corridors right out to the sea. So our building actually sits within these ecological corridors, and obviously it terminates, we've got the airport in front of us. But we tried to draw this idea of the ecology from the mountainside all the way through into the building, and the landscape permeates right under the canopy. And this is an image with the lid off, so the roof off, so you can see the extensive landscape. Shenzhen is also a sponge city, so they've got some great rules around water attenuation on site and water management. So we started to use this idea to make the water a feature on the site. So you can see the water actually permeates all the way through the site from north to south as well. And you can see the amount of landscaping on the site itself. The other pretty extraordinary thing about this project is it's right beside a residential area. So it's one of the only airports in the world you can take your suitcase from your home, walk across the road and get onto a plane. So when we talked to our client, who's the airport chairman, he said to us, what are the future of airports? And one of the things we said is how do you create an airport that's properly integrated into a city and not a standalone thing isolated by major infrastructure roads? And this in itself, because of its location and its integration with an existing city fabric, is a really successful. It was really successful for us because you have this direct connection back into an existing community, and that community then populates this new precinct. We've got retail, we've got culture facilities, we've got this new science and technology hub. So already we know, or we hope, that this precinct will be lively and activated by just the local community as well as the people coming into the site. And that's an image then of the Science and Technology Precinct using these ecological corridors to connect the site all the way through. And then I'm finally going to leave you, if I have time, with just a video when we walk through the building. If it will play after all our technology disasters so far. Let me see. Oh, here we go. So you can see the proximity of the hub and the master plan right through to this existing area. And then we're looking down, we're coming from the roof, coming down, looking into the East Plaza, which directly connects across the road to the residential area. So it's a big public plaza, and they're kind of the main entry point into the building. Coming down over the canopy, looking through this whole retail precinct, the bus station, and underground, then you've got the high-speed rail. Looking back over the piers of the airport, where we've got nature everywhere. Everywhere we've got courtyards. Almost from every point in the site, you're visible. You're looking into a garden or into nature. This is the main check-in area for the airport and the security. Coming to the terminal. Each of the spaces, even though we've got this mangrove roof, each of the soffits is slightly different, so defining the different spaces, although we have this uniformity throughout the site with the same roof. And again, in the terminal, we've got nature everywhere, including we have some mangrove gardens as well. This is the high-speed rail waiting hall. And coming down from sunken courtyard to the drop-off area, right the way up through these voids through the retail precinct, and you can see this kind of idea of this whole village underneath this mangrove roof. And then the sunset view to end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Louise. And now, is Leighton here from Desi Architecture? Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
Ready? Hello, my name is Leighton Reed, and I'm here to present a project called Diatom City. The principle behind this is one of our clients, a developer, is very interested in what you can do with the vacant space in cities. And over railway tracks, clearly is a large scar that cuts our cities apart and divides communities. The question is it possible to restitch that and make a profit? Or is it possible to do something rather special with that? We kind of had a look at sorts of the elements which inspired us. With terraces, the way in which you can cover one surface of land or to submerge other kinds of activities, and the notion of a diatom. Alongside that, we looked at a series of historic principles for the way in which you make enclosures and groups and community housing. In this case, we looked at the Gurunsi and we looked at Chinese roundhouses to see what communities could be built at both low and high level. An interesting factor about the diatom is that it's really rather like a Pringle. You can stack them quite easily and structure those forms, depending on the sorts of material you might use. And fashion's been using this for some time because of the textural quality, the fabric nature of it. As you can see, these notions of these elements, as they become three-dimensional, allow you for a different kind of construction using much of our rapid prototyping materials. As you can see here, where we're using waste plastic, which has a bearing weight, which is 2 to 3 times stronger than concrete, and also whose reinforcement, using the certain kinds of plastic, means that the reinforcement doesn't, in fact, change in relation to temperature as much as steel. So there's some advantages in this particular notion. So where did we look? We looked at Detroit, a city which had its center emptied through flight to the suburbs, and looking at the sorts of people who were left behind and how we could re-enfranchise them without necessarily having to take over those vacant lots. So we looked at the station. I think you've all seen this. Those of you who've ever watched a Transformers film, it's a great place. But you can see the beginnings of our plan. Our plan is to use this covering and to draw air through and up through the site, to use that as a form of part of the energy conscious element to what we're doing. The station here itself, you can see how large it is and what area it takes up. What could we do with that? Our notion. A series of structures which are based upon the roundhouse, structured in 4 to 5 layers, layered up in construction so that it became printed as opposed to constructed, using contemporary techniques which are becoming more and more prevalent, using the materiality that we talked about earlier. The tall towers being for those who wanted a certain kind of view and also who could afford it, and the lower areas being for all of the amenities facilities and also for a range of different sorts of income levels. You can see how they become more complex as they go up, and the way they can be laid out for a range of uses. We know developers don't like circular buildings because they're hard to let. But if you know what you're doing, you find that hotels are very happy to have them, and a number of other different sorts of businesses. What do those forms make? What they provide you with is a series of terraced areas for leisure and other uses and unparalleled views, and also energy collectors for a whole range of possibilities, including solar power and wind power. The section through the building shows quite a narrow internal area, so the air moves faster and runs the micro-turbines that give you the general power for the buildings. Looking through, you can also begin to make some interesting notions of small businesses. You can grow your own crops, you can have your own kitchen garden, and on top of that, you can begin to have small businesses that deliver food by drone. Those sorts of notions should really be built into our kind of contemporary understanding of architecture, and not simply sort of yet another monolith after monolith, yet another canopy after canopy. Our canopies are alive. They're microclimates. And you can see the range of levels possible with this particular kind of form. Moving between them, you have a series of surfaces that deliver to you leisure, work, pleasure, farms, and at the same time, at the low level, you can see the beginnings of the internal canopy, which is a mesh which generates energy. Sections through the apartments are really quite simple. On the far right-hand side, you can see the turbines which are generating the electricity, but we're going to be the first building that uses individual condensers for each apartment. The price is going down dramatically, so everybody will produce their own water. First building doesn't have a centralized water system, has its own local water. This is quite interesting, especially in terms of safety, because every flat has its own sprinkler system, and every flat generates it at source. A little bit more about the nature of that mesh and how the main structure works, going through to what it might be like to inhabit those spaces for leisure and pleasure. The skin itself can be pulled back, either to provide or to remove the energy production that you need. Could almost be rented out, could be an income generator. But overall, you have an interesting landscape, not unlike a hill, but a hill that's permeable. We hope that this sort of form could perhaps bring a sort of shared economy between those who have and those who have not, using the cheapest form of land available, that which is never built on. could become a little oasis. It could be a magnet in its own right. And maybe it could stitch the two sides of the city together. Something which every single city in Europe needs to do. Maybe a bit like this. Thank you. Thank you. So this is it's at its early stages of what something like this could be like, a different kind of building, a different kind of form. Something to think about, something to consider. We hope you find it interesting, if a little provocative. Thank you.